Hello there everyone, welcome back to the mini album workshop. Now I have to say I do realise that in the previous video it might have been a touch confusing as to what was what with regards to the material list. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show you how to make this mini album covering all the options of what everyone might have in their stash that they might want to use, okay? Because I had a friend ask me if she could use her 8x8 papers, which you can do. Just means you end up with a smaller album, that's all. So today is all about the pages, and I'm going to show you initially with the cardstock that I'm going to use, all right? Then I'm going to go on to go and show you different options of creating the pages. So hopefully this will then explain it a lot better for you, okay? So I originally used this cardstock which I talked about yesterday, and I used A3 card which I then cut down to A4. What I'm basically doing is I'm folding it in half. Now unfortunately, if you're using inches, there isn't a halfway mark that is easy to find on a sheet of A4. So there are two ways of doing it. One is to measure it to the nearest halfway point. The other is to fold it in half and slightly dink it in this corner so that you can see where it needs to be folded. All right, so put that to one side for a moment. So I've got my sheet of A4 card, and I'm going to get my score pal out because it just makes the folding a lot easier. Now I'm actually going to score this at 5 7/8 because that is the nearest halfway point for this measurement, because it's sort of 11 3/4 inches wide, and if you divide that by 2 there isn't a halfway point. So 5 7/8 is the nearest halfway point, so I'm going to score it there, okay? And then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to score it on the other side as well. Now scoring, what that does is it breaks down the fibres of the paper, because they've been put together so tightly that if you just fold your paper in half it can crack the paper. Alright, so if you score it on the front side and then on the back side, it helps to just break down those fibres to help to fold it in half, which means that hopefully, cross-fingered, it shouldn't crack the paper. So we're then going to fold it in half, and you can then score it, burnish it, and burnish it on both sides. Now if we have a real close-up look, probably shows up better on this one. Just hang on, let's see if I can show you. Can you see there is a very, very tiny little lip? And this is because there isn't a perfect halfway point on a sheet of A4 card, paper, whatever. Right, there's that tiny little lip. Now you can trim that tiny little lip off if you wish. Alright, so if you want to just make a note of that, we're going to do 6 of these, and we're going to score and fold at 5 7/8. If you want to trim off that little edge, then you can do, but I would score and fold and burnish each of the 6 pages first. So I've got one more left to do. So 5 7/8. And I'm going to score first on this side, and then I'm going to flip it over and score it on this side. And then I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to burnish that score fold down. So that's number 1, that's number 2, that's number 3, that's number 4, that's number 5, and that's number 6. Okay, so I've got my 6 pieces. Now at this point I'm going to trim off that tiny little piece. So you can now see how thin a piece it is, but it will make a difference when we come to put the pages together. So I'm just going to do that on all of them. So then I know that they're all going to sit comfortably on top of each other. Okay, that's my 6 now all done, and they're now all exactly the right size. Now, as I said to you in the previous video, I'm using plain cardstock as my pages, and then I'm going to decorate the pages themselves. You can use just your papers to make the pages, but again, I'm going to cover that in a little while. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick each of these pages together, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use I'm going to use my tacky glue, and I'm going to put a thin line of glue along the top, down the folded side, not the open side, but down the folded side, and I'm doing it fairly close to the edge, and then along the bottom. Okay, so I've done it across the top, down the side, and down the bottom, so that this edge is the open edge, and it's down the folded side that I've put the glue there, and then I'm going to sit one on top of the other. Now you could put it underneath some heavy books at this point. We want to make sure that they're all lined up, and also if you get any glue oozing out, then we just want to wipe that off. But it's the folded side that you need to make sure has got a perfect contact. A bit of glue oozing out there and there, wipe that off. Okay, so we've now got this. Right, and this is where the two pieces are joined together. So we're going to do that with all of our pieces. Put it away, come back. So I'm going to do it across the top. A lot of people also ask me where I get these little bottles from, and I actually get them just off eBay, and I put in precision tip bottles and they come up, but invariably they come from China, so you might need to wait a little while. I want to make sure I've got it up to the edge there, and then line the whole thing up and sit one on top of the other. Wipe away any excess and just apply a little bit of pressure to make sure that they're glued together. Now when I finish doing all 6 of these, I'm going to sit them underneath the book to apply that little bit of weight to help to make them stick together. Now I'm going to do it on this next one. So across the top again, down the folded edge, and across the bottom. And then stick one on top of the other, making sure that it's all lined up. You need to just sing to yourself for a minute, because this is a little bit like watching paint dry, I'm afraid. And stick that one on top. And then the last one. And again, just make sure that there's no glue oozing out. Now, at the moment, I don't know whether you can see that, but can you see how that one's slightly parting? So I'm hoping that by putting the book on there, it will actually condense those together and make sure that they're nice and even. So I've got a book off to the side here. I'm just going to sit it underneath the book. The camera might wobble a little, so I do apologise. There we go. Right, so they're now sat underneath and drying off. Now then, as I said, I wanted to show you different alternatives. In the original album that I made, I just used the papers from the paper pad to make the pages. Right, and I just found them just a tiny bit too flimsy, and that's why I decided to make the pages up with the cardstock rather than just the papers. If you don't have cardstock, then there's no reason why you can't just make them up with your pages from your paper pad. So if I was using, say, one of these paper pads from the works, I would just tear out the sheet that I wanted. I know that it's 12 inches wide, but I would always just double check that it is definitely 12 inches all the way around, because there's going to be nothing worse than finding that it's slightly off. So that's at the 12-inch mark there. Oh, moved. And I'm just going to put that down. Got moved again. There we go. And I'm just going to run the cutter up and down. It might only be a mere fraction that I take off, but I would rather it be dead square. And then I'm going to spin it round and do the same on the other side. So I'm just cutting down two sides. Right, now I can see that this is definitely shorter than 12 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that across so that I can take a nice strip off of there. Come on, it's curling. Okay, so I'm going to cut that strip off. Now I'm going to look at my measure up here, and I can see that it's 1/8 of an inch shorter. So I'm going to spin it again and cut this side down to 11 7/8. And then I know then that I've got a definite square piece of paper. Then I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm just going to use my bone folder to burnish that down. So I've now made my page, but it's too long, so I need to trim it down to be shorter. So I need to make a decision now at what sort of length I want my page to be, and I think I'm going to do it to 9 inches. So I can now put that back in my paper trimmer. Put it up to the 9-inch mark. And cut that off, and I'll keep that because I can use that later. So as you can see, I've just created a page just in the same way as I did with the card stock, with the green card stock, and I would need to make 6 of those, and then I would glue them together in exactly the same way as I've just done with the green card stock. All right, now then, if I had a look at a piece of 8x8 paper pad, again, I would do the same thing. I would just check to make sure that it's 8 inches square. Yep. And yeah, so I can see that that is now 8 inches square. I would then fold this piece of paper in half. And I've got my page again. So again, I would do another 5 of those to make up my 6 pages, and then I got the paper already set. Now, one of the things that you do need to consider, if you have got double-sided paper, so let's just say this one is double-sided paper. This is what you're going to see. You won't necessarily see this side because of the way in which the pages are stuck together. So if I had another one, I would then back it onto this one, and that would be stuck to this side. So you might want to consider, if you wanted the prettier side, what you consider to be the prettier side, to fold it this way around so that you've got the ugly one, which will become the back, and then the nicer one, which is the one that you will see. So then, as I say, we will then stick the 2 ugly sides together in the same way as I did with the green. So you might need to consider your double-sided paper, in which way around you want to have it. Now in this instance, it's single-sided paper. So I've got the pattern on the outside and the plain on the other side. So if I actually fold it that way round, and then I stick all my pages to each other, when I open up the page, I get to see the pretty paper. All right. Now the reason why I'm showing you this is because obviously in America and Canada, we have different sized papers. I'm just looking for another paper pad. There we go. We have different size papers, and so if I actually set the workshop up and only quoted European paper size, which is A4. For those that live elsewhere that have got different size papers to us, it would be quite confusing. And I want to be able to give you the options of looking at what you've already got in your stash and thinking to yourself, actually, I could use that. All right, so same with this, totally different size paper. Tear out my piece of paper, fold it in half, and I've got my first of my 6 pages. Bearing in mind, I don't want to see that side, so I'm going to fold it in half that way, so then the plain pages would then be stuck together. And in fact, if I just pull another one out, fold it in half with the right sides together, or the side that I want to be seen, because then I'm going to put glue across the top, down the folded edge and across the bottom, and then I'm going to sit that one on top so that they will then be glued together. I would then open that up and I've got the paper that I want to see. I would then flip over the page and I get to see the paper that I want to see. The third option as such is if you wanted to use any cardstock as your base pages. So this would be black card. Now with the green card that I used, it was 300 GSM. This is only 210 GSM. So even if you've got a thinner cardstock, you can still use it. What you would do is you would create the pages in exactly the same way as I did with the green ones, and then we're going to cut out our papers and stick them on top. So at this point for the pages, so long as it's 210 and up, so from 210 to 300 GSM thickness of card, then it will give your page a little bit more stability. All right, so don't think that you've got to look at your papers and think I've got to make that into a page, because you don't. You can make your page out of cardstock and then we'll decorate it afterwards. But now you get the idea that you have got options of your stash. So you can create an album that suits the stash that you have got. So I hope that that makes better sense for you in terms of creating the pages, using your stash that you've got. Look at what you've got, think about what you want to make, and then make your decision whether you want to do a card base one, which you will then decorate, or whether you want to make a paper pad page a paper pad page to make your pages up for your mini album. All right, so you've got a couple of options there that you can now consider. I'll just show you how this one's turned out. Okay, so now this now opens up and it forms a sturdy album because I've used the cardstock. All right, and you can see how it's now all come together at the spine area here. Now I know that this is only covering just a small part of the mini album, but I thought it was important to just do one complete video for you to think about what you want to use, whether you want to do cardstock or whether you want to use your paper pads. It also is for you to think about what size you actually want it to be, because the size itself doesn't matter. It's what you've got, what you can use, and what you want to create. Okay, again, any questions, please ask me on group if there's anything that you're unsure of. But this is the first video of starting to make this mini album. You need to now go away and consider what you actually want to use and what you want to create. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all again in the next one. Bye for now.